On this problem, we're going to solve the equation. The equation they give us is negative 10x squared plus 15 equals negative 19x. We're going to have to go through 4 different steps to get to the solution of this equation. The first step is we're going to need to write the equation in standard form. The second step, we're going to have to take out the greatest common factor. The third step, we're going to have to factor the remaining trinomial into binomial factors. And the final step is we're going to solve for x by using the zero product property. So our first step is to rewrite the equation in standard form. So in standard form, our trinomial is going to have the x squared term, then the x term, then the constant term, and then 0. So in order to make that happen on our problem, we're going to need to add 19x to both sides. So that will give us negative 10x squared plus 19x plus 15 equals 0. Now, that's standard form. We're ready to start factoring. But this problem has an a value that's bigger than 1, and this problem has a c value that's a big number with several factors. So in order to make our problem easier, we want to try to take out the greatest common factor. But because 19 is prime, there isn't a number that goes into 10, 19, and 15 evenly. So the only greatest common factor that we can take out, the thing that will make this problem easier, is if our greatest common factor is negative 1. So I'm going to write the problem like this. I'm not going to write the unwritten 1 anymore, because that's not really the acceptable way of doing it in math. I'm just going to leave it unwritten. And if I divide every term in my trinomial by negative 1, I'll know what the remaining trinomial will be inside the parentheses. So negative 10x squared divided by negative 1 is positive 10x squared. Positive 19x divided by negative 1 is negative 19x. And positive 15 divided by negative 1 is negative 15. So I've taken out the greatest common factor, and the greatest common factor was negative 1. Notice that I didn't write negative 1 in front of the parentheses. I just put a negative sign in front of the parentheses. So now we're going to have to factor the remaining trinomial into a pair of binomial factors. So we're going to have negative, and then we're going to have a binomial, and then we're going to have another binomial equals 0. So the first thing I can tell about this problem is that my c value is negative. So my signs are going to have to be different. So I'm going to have a plus sign and a minus sign. Now that alone makes this problem difficult because we might put in the numbers and letters and then we'll have to switch the signs in order to get the right answer. Okay, so now for the number 10, we could use 1 and 10 or 2 and 5. For the number 15, we could use 1 and 15 or 3 and 5. Now, I'm going to start by using the numbers that are closest together. It's just a guess, but that's how I'm going to start the problem. So I'm going to put in 2x and I'm going to put in 5x. And then I'm going to use 3 and 5. Now, this spot right here, I need to either put a 3 in there or a 5 in there. But from the last video, you should know that putting a 5 there is a bad idea because that binomial will have a greatest common factor of 5. And if there was a greatest common factor, we would have already put it out in front, and we didn't. So on this problem, if I'm going to use 3 and 5, I want to put the 3 here, and I want to put the 5 there. Now, I need to check and see if this is going to work. So I've got FOIL, and my firsts come out to 10x squared. My lasts come out to negative 15. So those both match what I want to get from my trinomial. Now I need to see if my inners and outers are going to add up to negative 19. So my outers are negative 6x and my inners are positive 25x. And when I put negative 6 together with positive 25, it's going to come out to positive 19. But what I want is I want a negative 19. So I think I know exactly what I'm going to do on this problem. I'm going to switch the signs. So I'm going to make this a negative 5, and I'm going to make this a positive 3. So now when I multiply my outers, I will have a positive 6x. And when I multiply my inners, I will have a negative 25x. And when I put those together, that will make negative 19. So my final answer in factored form, and this isn't the answer to the problem, this is just the factored form answer. I have negative 2x minus 5 and 5x plus 3 equals 0. So now I need to solve this problem using the zero product property. And so both of these binomials have coefficients in front of the x. So for both of these problems, I'm going to have to solve an equation to get the answer. So I asked myself, what value of x will make 2x minus 5 equal 0? And I asked myself, what value of x will make 5x plus 3 equal 0? Now I add 5 to both sides on my first equation, and I will get 2x equals 5. And then I divide both sides by 2, and my final answer is x equals 5 over 2. On my second equation, I subtract 3 from each side, and I have 5x equals negative 3. And then I divide both sides by 5, and my answer is x equals negative 3/5. So these are the solutions to my original equation. On this problem, the directions say, find the x coordinates of the points where the graph crosses the x-axis. So what they want us to do is take a look at this point here where the pink graph crosses the x-axis, and this point here where the pink graph crosses the x-axis. So there's a couple things that we know about those 2 points. Both of those 2 points are going to have y coordinates of 0. So to get to this point, I have to go over some amount and up 0. To get to this point, I have to go over some amount and up 0. So just to estimate right off the bat, this looks like it's around a half. It's right in the middle between 0 and 1. And this looks like it's around 7. Those are the x-intercepts. But I want to find out for sure, what are those x values? So I take the equation that they gave us in the problem. This is the equation that if you graphed it on a graphing calculator would give you this parabola. And there's my equation right there. The first thing that I need to do is I need to realize that my y values for both of these points, my y values will be 0. So the first thing I'm going to do, I want to find out what is x when y is 0. I'm going to take my y value and I'm going to replace it with 0. So now I have the equation 0 equals negative 2x squared plus 15x minus 7. And since a is not 1, I want to take out the greatest common factor. But 2 is a prime number and 7 is a prime number. So there's not going to be any number that goes into 2 and 15 and 7 evenly. But since a is negative, I need to make sure that I take out the greatest common factor of negative 1. So my equation is going to look like this. So negative times 2x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative times negative 15x is positive 15x. And negative times positive 7 is negative 7. So I took out my greatest common factor, which is negative 1. Now, this problem has a lot of things going for it. First of all, 2 is prime. So I know that I'm going to use 1x and 2x. 7 is also prime. So I know I'm going to use 1 and 7. So my C value is 7 and it's positive. So I know that my signs have to be the same. And since 15, my B value is negative, I know they both need to be negative. All right, so when I look at the first term, it's 2x squared. There's only one way to get that. It's going to be 2x and x. So my firsts are done correctly. Now, my last term, or my C term, is 7. So when I do my lasts, I'm going to have a 1 and a 7. So right now, I'm going to think this through before I write anything down. If I put the 7 here, my inners will be negative 7. And if I put a 1 here, my outers will be negative 2. And negative 7 and negative 2 do not come out to negative 15. So that's not the way I want to do it. But if I put the 7 here, my outers will be negative 14. And I put the 1 here, my inners will be negative 1. And negative 1 and negative 14 is negative 15. So that'll be the right answer. So that's how I'm going to write it down. So I have 2x minus 1 as my first binomial and x minus 7 as my second binomial. When I check my firsts, 2x times x is 2x squared. When I check my last, negative 1 times negative 7 is positive 7. When I check my outers, that's negative 14x. And my inners are negative 1x. So that makes negative 15x. Now there's one last thing I need to do, which is the zero product property, just like on the last problem. And when I do the zero product property, my two solutions will be 1/2 and 7. So now when I come over here and I look at the graph, I'm trying to find out where's the x-intercept? Where does it cross the x-axis? And so I'm trying to find out what numbers go here for the x-coordinates. Well, what I just found out was that this is going to be 7, 7,0. So this x-intercept matches this solution to the equation. So my other x-coordinate, which describes this x-intercept right here, this point where the pink line crosses the x-axis, is going to be this solution to my equation. So the directions say find the x-coordinates of the points where the graph crosses the x-axis. And the x-coordinate for this point is 7, and that point is 7, 0 on the x-axis. And the x-coordinate for this point is 1/2, and so this is 1/2, 0 on the x-axis.